My brain is always bombarded with thoughts. It's like the static of a TV you can never turn off. Each thought constantly rubbing against one another, agitating each other. Every action of my life, every choice I make, must be calculated to a T. I like to plan, I always have. I set alarms for every event of my day, even if it's just a reminder to paint my nails. And I write down every thought or task to make sure it doesn't get lost in the mess that is my neural pathway. I second-guess myself so much so that thus far I have written 7 other chapel talks on topics ranging from my recovery from anorexia and bulimia to defining the line when tradition turns into a synonym for complacency. Everyone thinks twice, everyone has regrets, but when I make a choice, I think long-term. And when I make a mistake, I think of every domino that will fall due to my initial push. It feels as if I'm on fire from within. It feels like I don't really know myself, like I'm some imposter within my own core, making decisions that affect myself, but that are not in fact decisions I remember making. Why can I never just be quiet? In fact, that's a question my sister and brother frequently asked me as a child. Why can you never be quiet, Cecile? Except they used very different words and meant it in a much more literal sense. But there's one place where my thoughts don't follow me. One place where I feel at peace. This place is called Castelfranc. This is a little town in the south of France where my mother grew up. And when I say little, I mean little. It has an area of less than 5.6 square kilometers, or 2.2 square miles, and at most, 400 people. Most buildings are hundreds of years old, and the home I live in there, my mother's childhood home, is 2 times older than America. People don't move to Castelfranc. Every person there was born there and will probably die there. Unless you're old and British, then you probably have a quaint vacation home by the river. Everything about Castelfranc is simple. The song the crickets sing in the hot summer air is simple. The vegetables my grandmother grows for her ratatouille are simple. And the clear blue sky that reflects off the gushing river bordering my home there is simple. It's all so incredibly simple. But there's one part of Castelfranc that isn't so simple for me to interpret. And that is, why is it so important to me? Let me truly introduce Castelfranc to you all. To enter, you walk down a pale, rocky path, only to be met by some of the biggest dogs you'll ever encounter. The dogs de Tibet, otherwise known as Tibetan Mastiffs. Continue straight, and you'll be asked to cross a long bridge hovering over a narrow flowing river. If you look down, you'll likely be able to see the small fish battling the current and maybe a crawfish hiding under the murky stones. The river will most likely be calm, as I'm explaining my home during the summer, but that same river can be savage, especially in the winter, which is the reason why the original bridge that stood for hundreds of years had to be replaced. Next, you'll feel protruding rocks in the concrete guarding the front of the house as they uncomfortably morph the soles of your feet with every step. Eventually, you'll hear a cry, "Mamie!" coming from my grandmother's vibrant green parrot named Juma that trails behind her. Inch closer and the parrot may say the word, "hello," and as its pupils dilate red. Say hello back and its wings will flare. But that encounter won't last long before you hear the returning cry of my grandmother, "Oui, Juma!" My grandmother is small, but she's mighty. She's about 4'10", speaks only angry Southern French, and has the energy and agility of a child. She has spunk, almost too much of it. Regardless of if I'm in France or not, my grandmother doesn't stop. She's constantly doing something, mostly gardening, but I'm not so sure that's what she's doing, because that's what she says she's been doing for about 15 years. Next, you'll enter the home. Immediately, you'll be slapped in the face by an aroma that you'll never be able to explain. It's not old people smell, but it's also not lavender. It's the smell of Castelfranc for me. Sorry, I can't give a better description. As the home odor diffuses into your lungs, you'll hear some sort of French news playing on a 30-year-old radio, expelling the voice of a calm Parisian lady. This plays all day, every day. Look up and you'll see not one, not two, but 3 thermostats. One is new and digital and tells the temperature of the outside. The other is older and tells the temperature of the inside. And the third used to be my late grandfather's thermostat that he used on his farm. It has no real purpose, but my grandmother says she keeps it for the big font of the numbers for when she's too old to see and wants to know the temperature. We all know it's just to hold on to the memory of my grandfather, though. Take off your shoes and go back outside. The grass is always soft and warm, and the wind kisses your skin just enough to combat the grueling sun. Now venture to the other side of the home, behind the garage where your swimming towel hangs, and look down at the black rubber bucket. In it, you'll find tadpoles, 10s of them. Fearlessly, you'll stick your hand in, and it will exit with one puny, slimy tadpole. It's gross, so you let it go and scream, "Ew." And off to dinner you run. Then night comes. Finally, you put on shoes, but only sandals because you're still in the south of France, and you'll walk into the town laid out by homes. You'll likely be force-fed gazpacho, but it will all be worth it for the merguez and pomme aligot that follow. Pomme aligot is cheesy mashed potatoes, by the way. Then you and your cousin will escape to the park. There you'll both sit in the rotating chair, spinning yourselves right up until vomiting. And it's time for home. But at night, you don't sleep in a bed. You sleep on the trampoline with your cousin and watch as the shooting stars pollute the air. That's a typical day in Castelfranc for me. Every day is like that. It's probably not hard to understand why someone would love Castelfranc so much from a general standpoint. But what I don't understand is, even in its lack of complexity, I love it. We've all been taught to love complex things. If something is too simple, it's too easy and not worth understanding. But if something is complex, especially in a school environment, we immediately worship it. It means it's worth something because others might not be able to understand it. But Castelfranc is not this. Everyone understands it, and yet it's still precious. But as I've aged, I've come to fear Castelfranc. Not the entity itself, but rather how much I've strayed from who I am when I'm in the town. Outside of Castelfranc, I'm fake. I am constantly surrounded by distractions or responsibilities that truly don't matter. These distractions are not what being human really is. It's just passing the time to pass the time. There's so much comfort in these distractions because they make us feel useful or avoid our uselessness. But in the end, life will still be life, whether we avoid it or not. I forget about my distractions when I'm in Castelfranc. It's not as if the art of forgetting is hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost. But I know, like a wave, my memories will float away into the sea and soon come crashing back to me. Hill is one of my distractions. It's a temporary bubble for us all. It's a great one too. When you're at Hill, everything that happens here seems like it matters so much. Your grades matter, your relationships with others matter, your extracurriculars matter, what you wear matters. But step out of that bubble, enter an environment where the bubble never existed, and all your concerns that originated on this campus will, poof, disappear. One day your Hill bubble will pop. It won't be after graduation, it won't be during the summer. It will probably be about 2 to 3 months into college where you're submerged into a specialized environment where nothing is truly expected of you. You're left to expect things of yourself. I'm still waiting for my bubble to pop too. And trust me, I'm dreading it. I love hyper-focusing on SAMH events, studying, and hanging out in the dorms. But it somewhat comforts me to know while I'm here in this curated, imaginary land, reality continues whether I acknowledge it or not, whether it pertains to me or not. I find comfort in knowing my existence doesn't really matter. It puts less pressure on me. However, I've come to realize that my ignorance to reality must come to an end eventually. But underformers, try not to think about that right now. Eventually, you'll enter the world and learn to live by your own choices. But for now, enjoy the choices that are made for you, even if you resent them. I devoted a large part of my life last year searching for a purpose to combat my sensation of uselessness and lack of control. I wanted to make use of my existence, but I've come to understand that no one person is lucky enough to be designated a single purpose, and you won't find something you like doing until you're comfortable alone with yourself first. It's all a process that takes time. So I've learned to be patient and take the world as it comes to me. As a kid, leaving Castell was something I dreaded. I recall the car rides of me gasping for air in between the gaps of my crying as we drove to my other grandparents' house in France that was nothing like Castell. And yet now I fear going back. I fear the actualization I must face that my priorities at this moment are not human, they are artificial. And yet, Castell is intensely sheltered. Still there, I'm not faced with real problems, human problems. Because I know, further than just facing reality, I will have to face pain. I will have to face individuals who do not care about my well-being. I will have to face a world that doesn't have a spot made for me in it, and rather a spot I must make for myself. There's a certain real world we'll all be asked to enter one day. Well, maybe not all of us. Some people may have the privilege to stay delusional, to stay fragile. But for a lot of us, there's a real world waiting, and I don't know about you, but I'm petrified. I like to tell myself that the skills I've gained along the way will help me. But even though I may not know much, I know that that's probably not true. We will all be entering this next part of our lives vulnerable. And though I hold a great deal of fear, I believe I hold a great deal of anticipation as well. I say, I believe, because I can't tell if I'm actually excited or my brain is telling me I am to dampen my anxiety and delusionality. But I'll go with it. I'm excited to be uncomfortable in my future setting. I'm excited to enter an environment where I have no friends. I'm excited to have to pave my own way in my education. I'm excited for the chance to find my own priorities, the things that make me happy, not the things I feel are expected of me to succeed. I'm excited to actually find out who I am. And though I may just be lying to myself, I'd rather lie to myself with hope than avoid the future that inevitably awaits me. I know everything will be fine as long as I make it fine. And I know that holds true for every individual here. So I wish you all luck in your coming years, and I encourage us all to focus on every moment we are fortunate enough to have left together. These years may feel incredibly important, but don't conform to others' wishes for your future. Find what brings you the most joy and pursue it, because though it's hard, there's no time for regret, only change. Thank you for granting me these last 4 years of my life.